Massey. Next, we have Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis, you have 5 minutes and 20 seconds. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and of course, thank you to my colleague. I'll use up all 20 seconds and say thank you to Mr. Massey. So this is a really, really good study, and I'm ever happy to be on this committee now. So just a few initial thoughts. First thought is my riding of Essex, I'm surrounded by Lake St. Clair, the Detroit River, and Lake Erie. And so we've got ports, we've got ferries, we have the HMCS Hunter, as Mr. Massey mentioned, we have barges, we have the Coast Guard sitting in our own backyard, police boats. The first thing I would say is, and I've already brought this up to to St. Clair College. I floated this about 2 months ago, and they're very much on board. I think it'd be a great idea to start a training center in the area. It's centralized to Canada. It'll we can put people on the ferries. We can put them on the freighters. We have ADM, which ships grain across to the United States. They can learn to navigate. We've got the military. So that's just a point of interest. I've already opened those talks up. But I guess my question would be, where, Mr. Laforce, where are those two training centers specifically? Where are they at, the two that you spoke to?
Well, the one that submitted an application for ESDC and they're waiting for, so you got the Institut Maritime, so it's Rimouski, it's along the St. Lawrence. You got the Georgian College as well, so it's in Ontario. So these are the two main on the east, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So, fortunate enough to have a family cottage on Manitoulin Island. So the Chichimon ferry takes our family over there every year. Sometimes twice a year if you're not in politics, I suppose. And I went over there right after the House rose. Was on there, and the cooks and the deckhands were all speaking English, but they sounded a lot like they were from Newfoundland. So I got inquisitive. I started asking questions. And come to find out that nearly 75% of the folks in the Chichimon actually came in from Newfoundland. So, of course, I went to Minister O'Regan. I said, Minister, you realize I'm stealing your people, sir. And he said, I don't know what you mean. So obviously his office apparently overlooks the port in St. John's. Long story short is, my point is, we're stealing Peter to pay Paul. Because if we're taking them from Newfoundland, fantastic folks, love them to death, that's not getting the job done. So I'm wondering, I guess I'll take it one step further. So last week I was in Taiwan, got a chance to visit the Taipei port. And this port is so incredibly digitalized. So at the end of the day, it goes like this. You get a ship of 24,000 sea containers being offloaded, one every 30 minutes, which was remarkable in and of itself. And so in speaking to the CEOs of the port, they said, yeah, so we took our labor force from somewhere in the 41 people per shift down to 18. Wow. He said, but we hired more people. Because we're so modernized at our ports, we had to hire way more truck drivers, which I'm going to suggest it's probably easier to get truck drivers than it is for folks to use booms and all those types of things. Just with regard to the ports, and I'm saying this because of the labor side of things, any idea with regard to our ports on the East Coast or West Coast, if that's something that we're actively going after, and is there something the government can do to help that out?
You mean in regards to investment for new technology?
That's correct.
I know for sure, like the Port of Montreal is heavily invested in new technology. It's expanding its container terminal, for instance. So it's something that ports are aware of, but they do have limits in terms of their investment capacity. That's because of the act that governs their operation. It is due for review. We're anxiously waiting for the government to table amendments to it, and we're hopeful that it will allow ports to invest more in new technology so they can be like the Taipei port.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, how much time left, sir?
You have 1 minute.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll just finish it off with one question. So, and I don't know who I should address this to. I do know there was an issue between our western ports and our eastern ports with regard to our labor force. And so it's the amount of hours worked compared to the hours that they have off. I believe the western ports have more time off than the eastern ports have. But it doesn't necessarily affect each, but I'm wondering, would it be beneficial to all of our shipping industry, specifically to our labor folks, to have one standard for Canada?
To that, I would say that we would need some intervention to an extent to provide for labor to continue in the event of disruptions. That's something that's been happening in the past, and it affects the reputation of a port. So once a port goes through several labor issues, it can affect its international reputation, and shippers will try to avoid it so that they want to avoid disruption. I'm not aware of the difference between West and East, but for sure some federal intervention to just help mediate any problems on the labor side would be gladly appreciated by members, yes.